Jordan Peterson and Vivek Ramaswamy do another hour and 45-minute podcast interview, and this is probably one of their most animated, agreeable moments in the whole podcast. And let me know what you think and if you agree with them. If you're new to this channel, my name is Aaron. I do Christian commentary on culture. So let's get right into this viral clip where they are just going teeing off really on the deepest levels of intellect and knowledge that I could find throughout the whole podcast. Let's get right into it.
I think. So let's talk about that vision of the future. So this is going to be a bit of a convoluted question because I have to wander around a bit to answer it. So I've been involved in this enterprise that's established in the UK, but has roots in Australia and Europe and the US and Canada. We're trying to formulate a positive vision of the future. And one of our principles, let's say, our suppositions, is that if your vision of the future is predicated on fear, so it's an apocalyptic vision, let's say, and you're using that fear as a means to garner power to yourself, you're not to be trusted. And this is happening most particularly, I would say, on the climate apocalypse front. And I suspect that there are any number of existential crises awaiting us in the future, as there always are. But my sense is that if you use any given crisis as the means of instilling a demoralizing fear, and the consequence of that is that you're gathering power to yourself, you're not to be trusted as an advocate of the people, and that you should be putting forward a positive vision. And we're trying to differentiate that and delineate it. And we would like to see cheap energy. We would like to see a multidimensional approach to environmental maintenance. We would like to see, a reestablished commitment to the fundamentals of the minimal necessary family. We're not very fond of corporate gigantism, but most importantly, I would say, of all those things, is that we believe that we can all be offered a positive vision of the future so that we have something to strive for that's motivating and hopeful, instead of being enjoined to cower and destroy our own ambitions because we're something approximating a planet-destroying force. Now, I know that the typical young man in grade 12 now is more likely to be conservative than liberal. It's not true of young women. The tide is turning on the generational front. And I think it is because young people have been force-fed so much apocalyptic doom that they've really had enough of it. And so and I see this in your tweets and your communications too, that you're trying to outline a positive vision. So, and you've laid out some of the principles. And you talk a little bit about the return to constitutional principles, but if you saw a renewed America, and by implication a renewed West, what would that renewal look like? Like, where would we be in 5 years or 10 years that's different from now, and how might you move us towards that?
So this is very interesting because he lines out this argument of saying, okay, obviously we don't want to grab onto what is, I'm going to say hell, right? Because hell for a conservative, or what they are agreeing with, is the wokeism, right? You don't want to be running a campaign based on something you don't want to do. You want to run a campaign based on something you do want to grab onto and you could adhere to. And we see this in marketing as well. We see marketing, my background, they portray an idealized future or an end result. They focus on the problem a little bit, but they don't focus on the problem to make you buy their product. They focus on the problem, then give you the solution, and there is the solution. And so what they're going to get into, and I'm sure if you've heard of this already, we don't focus on the wokeism and how we're scared and how that's bad, and that's your whole agenda for running this campaign, but that Vivek is running towards an idealized future. Now, because this is Christian commentary, I just can't help but to think, and Jordan Peterson has used this term in the past, that is hell. Hell is something you don't want to do. And I think as Christians that a lot of people fall into one of three camps when predicting the future or trying to persuade or motivate people to believe in Jesus or at least go to church, right? 1, you don't want to go to hell. 2, heaven now. 3, heaven later. And so the first one, don't go to hell. You ever see those street preachers out on the corner just like, y'all going to hell, like you better turn and repent or turn and burn, you know what I mean? That's what they're doing. And I think that is never really that persuasive. People, I mean, maybe there's somebody out there persuaded to follow him or follow Jesus and open up a Bible because of that, at least gets the gears going, but I don't think it's enough to persuade someone. And I think that's what he's talking about. We don't really turn to that. But however, in Christianity, there are two more end goals. The first end goal is heaven now, right? That we believe that as Christians, there are certain values, and following Jesus Christ will produce peace in your life in this life, will produce joy in this life, will produce kindness and patience and love in this life, that you will prosper, and prosper not in monetary sense necessarily, but you will prosper in meaning and purpose in this life, right now. And there are some parts of Christianity, especially preachers, will fall here, which is totally viable, because hell is totally viable too. But I don't think that alone, again, is enough to persuade someone to become a Christian. However, you have to bring in heaven in the future, right? That death is a real thing, and that we cannot escape death. It's the worst outcome for anybody, and there's nothing you could do about it. But Jesus and the God of the Bible presents a even more idealized future. So Vivek is going to answer this based on the American dream, but in a Christian perspective, it's still going to happen. It doesn't matter how good America is going to get, or how idealized your life will be in this life. Death is coming, and that's going to take away everything from you. And now everyone's destiny is now abysmal at the very end, except if you're a Christian, except if you believe in a new heaven, new earth, and you'll be with Jesus for eternity. That is the ultimate idealized future. And so I think just for Christians, we need to focus. We need to balance ourselves out. Yeah, I think there needs to be a doctrine of hell, a doctrine of heaven now, and a doctrine of heaven later. And that produces a balanced Christian and a balanced gospel message from the Bible, because the Bible speaks to all three of those aspects. Anyway, let's get back into this video here, and when Vivek is going to respond, especially with this idealized American vision.
I think it is an ordering of our society on things that have always grounded successful, flourishing societies throughout our human history. So the left preys on this vacuum of identity with race, gender, sexuality, and then now what you just mentioned, climate. It's serial. Once the climate farce is, and I do think that much of the agenda around it is a farce, once that's revealed and untenable, just as when the COVID-19 pandemic passed, the residual climatism filled the void. Once this farce passes, and people like yourself, myself, Alex Epstein, and Bjorn Lomborg and others are playing roles in exposing this, it'll be something else that fills the void. I don't know what it is, but it'll be something. Now, I think that what I see right now is a lacking in a conservative movement that becomes too, what should I say, lazy, too satisfied, complacent. Probably complacent is the right word, with just criticizing that vision and the endless hypocrisies and the nature of how uninspiring it is. And it is uninspiring. But just criticizing it is also uninspiring. And so I want us talking more and acting more on ordering a country, a nation, a society grounded in the value of each individual. A member who is a member of a family, who is a family that is embedded in a nation with commitments to that nation. And yes, I think a revival of a belief that we are one nation under God. That doesn't mean a single religion or a single, religious orthodoxy pushed from on high. In fact, I think it shouldn't be so. But broadly, individual, family, nation, God, as an affirmative alternative to race, gender, sexuality, and climate. And I think that that vision is not only more innately inspiring to young people, to all people, it is grounded in truth, right? We have distinct sources of our identity that we as lost human beings, who wander in that wilderness, biblically wander in that desert, we need something to ground us. And I think that reviving the value of the individual through hard work and the creation of what you create through hard work and the ability to be proud of that. I was talking yesterday to two entrepreneurs who are themselves already young, actually, not much older than me, multi-billionaires who are now on their next creation. I asked him, what motivates you? I think he didn't have an answer other than to say, hard work, actually. I believe in hard work as an ethic, and I believe in creation. That's great. I said, I need to help. I need your help in bottling that up, and I need to put that in the water across this country. But the value of hard work, the value of the family, that there is truth to having a commitment to the unit of two parents in the house with a commitment to their children first. The idea that, you know what, I will take care of my family first before I worry about the starving child in the middle of the Congo. Not to say that there's something wrong with going and helping the starving child in the middle of the Congo, but to say that there's an ordering. I am a self, that means something. I work hard and create something in the world, and I am proud of that, and I am an individual agent, not riding some tectonic plate of group identity. But there's only ever one you, Dr. Peterson. There's only ever one me. There's only ever one anyone. And that there's inherent value as the individual. The same thing I'll say is that my first commitments are to my family, the children who I brought into this world, the wife with whom I am raising those children, the parents who brought me into this world. Those are my commitments. And then around that, I have commitments as a citizen to this nation, that I will go and visit the south side of Chicago or Kensington in the middle of Philadelphia before I go take pictures with some child in Myanmar so I can post it on my social media account and feel better about myself. I'll get to Myanmar later. I'll get to the Congo later, but I'm a citizen of this nation, and that means something to me too. So I take care of myself through my own hard work and dedication. I take care of my family. I take care of my nation, that I'm proud of these things, that I believe that we're a nation under God. And then, yes, as human beings, we are all equal in the eyes of each other, because in the Christian tradition or Judeo-Christian tradition, you'll say we're made in the image of God. I'm raised in a Hindu household. We say it's that God resides in each of us, but whatever formulation it is, that there is a higher power. And then once we've taken care of all of that, then we can get to, Ethiopia or South Africa or Myanmar or wherever else one might go. But I think what we see right now is a substitution of that effect, right? Intensely worried about the climate apocalypse, or intensely worried about some fringe problem that doesn't affect your own community or your family or your nation at home, as a substitute for the actual things that in a time-tested way ground us as human beings. And so I'm still just scratching the surface, but at least gives you a taste of how I view that future.
Well,
So I'm a little disturbed by this answer, quite honestly. There are three things that I need to bring up. Number one, the one nation under God. Number two, the ordering of which he says what is in that order, and I'll probably spend more on that in the next segment. And number three is the word he uses, like responsibility. I'm sure he was taking time to try to figure out those words. He was going very slow and methodical. So I'm just going to be a little charitable here, but let me start with number one, the one nation under God. That to me is a little difficult to grasp, and the reason why is because he is a Hindu, I am a Christian. There's Muslims here who say Allah is God, and then there's people who are atheists. So who maybe the universe is God, maybe they're God. Believing in one nation under God is nice to. It's a nice theory, but I would assume that you could derive different values and different agendas based on the different gods. They're all not the same. I mean, just a superficial reading of the Bible and the Quran and Hinduism and even Hinduism. Like I've learned a lot from your comments down in my other videos about Vivek, and Hinduism is it's like more of a philosophy apparently. And so depending on the God that this one nation is under, that only goes like just so surface level. You can't derive like the most important values are the same across the board as those gods. So that's the first thing. And if you want to let me know if you can derive, if they all up in the same place, please let me know in the comment section below, because I just simply don't agree with that. The second thing is that the order he was listing out, and I'll probably spend more time on this a little bit later in the video, but it's the individual to the family to the community or the friends or whatever, and then to the nation, and then to God. And I think that this is all the way, I think this is totally off. And the reason why is because he he mentioned he's dedicated to hard work. Well, what happens when you can't work hard? What happens when you're in a car crash and you're like you can't do anything? Now, does your value go down, and does that go away? What happens when even in your family, like he said, I have a commitment to my children, and then my wife, and then my my parents who brought me into this world. Well, what about your commitment to your wife's parents? What about your commitment if you're divorced and you have kids that are split up? What about your commitment if your parent or if your children and your wife and your parents all conflict? Who do you choose first here? And I'm speaking in generalities, but the fact of the matter is that he's using a straw man argument, unfortunately, and he's saying, you need to focus on this. We can't be worried about children in the Congo. Well, I don't think anyone would really disagree with him, left or right. Like, of course, we're not going to worry about children in the Congo when I got turmoil and chaos in my own family and life. The Bible does order this for us, and says puts the wife your husband, the spouse first, and then the children, and then from there we have to use wisdom and discernment to do that. But even before that is the precedence of God. But before that, we need to talk about this word that he's using, responsibility, and I would probably replace that with the word loyalty or honor. You are more loyal to your spouse before you are loyal to your children, given all things normal circumstances, right? You are more loyal to your children than you are loyal to your parents, I would think. And so those are the nuances that really do matter, and I'm very curious to what he would say to that in this video. But let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think we would be more loyal to within those three, even so? And so I'm curious about the ordering, but Jordan Peterson really kind of takes it into a direction here where they both get very animated. And quite honestly, I don't agree with them in here. So let's just take a look at it.
I've been spending a lot of time assessing the book of Exodus, right? And part of what the book of Exodus does is lay out a psychological and social alternative to tyranny and chaos. And chaos is the desert in the Israelite sojourn. And so you can imagine two extremes of misgovernment. One would be tyrannical order, and the other would be desert chaos. And the alternative that's put forward in that book is an alternative that the Catholics in particular have referred to as subsidiarity. And it's the notion of a hierarchical identity that's both individual and social. And it very much parallels what you're describing as the essence of identity itself. Now, you see a craving for this on the left because the leftists tend to prioritize hedonic impulse, right, as sort of the grounds of individual subjectivity. And then in response to the lack that produces, they leap to global identity solutions, and that would be ethnicity, race, or maybe but what
climate.
The appropriate the appropriate alternative to that is, I think, historically speaking, the subsidiary structure that you're laying out. So you could say, well, first and foremost, you're responsible for yourself. You have to take care of yourself, and that's a duty and an obligation, but also a source of meaning, right, of meaningful striving.
Yes.
And if you can manage that, well, then you can embed yourself within a couple. And that's another place you can derive meaning and identity. And if the two of you can organize yourselves halfway intelligently as a mutually sacrificial couple, because you're sacrificing your short-term impulses to her well-being and vice versa, and counseling each other to do the same for yourselves, well, then maybe you can establish a family. And that's your next level of responsibility. And then maybe a community or a business enterprise, and then maybe a town, and then maybe a city or a state, and then maybe a nation. And then you said, that has to be nested under God. And that is, that's one of the pillars of Catholic social doctrine, one of the three pillars, that notion of subsidiarity. And I think it is the time-tested alternative to top-down Tower of Babel statist centralism and the absolute inchoate chaos of the fragmented identity that we see unfolding in the world now. And I think that's why this message of responsibility, by the way, is echoing so deeply with young people, particularly with young men, because meaning is to be found in that subsidiary hierarchy of responsibility, right? And it's also ethical. And you you implied this. It's also ethical, oddly enough, to focus your attention first on what's local to you, right? Take care of yourself first, then take care of your wife. It doesn't mean other people aren't important, but it means that you have a hierarchy of responsibility and that you should take care of what's local and immediate before you dare or deign to presume that you're capable of doing something that's more abstract. And I know people
that's
understand
absolutely
this.
right. That's absolutely right. It's intuitive.
So I'm gonna restate what I'm interpreting here is that you gotta take care of yourself first. The individual comes first, and then you have a subsidiary hierarchy of responsibility to other things. And I just can't help. And someone talking me off the ledge here, but I think, and I'm just going to challenge Jordan Peterson here and Vivek, even though I love these guys and I respect them and they're way more intelligent than I am in my lizard brain. But isn't this the same agenda as the left? And I know that they both would not agree that they would be in the left, but isn't this the same agenda in the left? They are to take care of themselves first too. They would agree with all that if I just put that down on paper. They would agree with that. And the reason why they would is because they've got a problem. Let's just say gender dysphoria, right? They've got a problem here and they're trying to take care of that in the best way they know how to take care of that. And they're taking care of themselves first. They're looking inwards first. And that so much so that they're willing to subjugate and bend truth and change everyone else's truth because that's just them. They're trying to take care of themselves first. And to me, it's a very self-centered worldview. And I don't think I'm interpreting this incorrectly. Jordan Peterson he agreed and doubled down on how Vivek laid out the order, and the order was the individual first, then the spouse, then the family, then to the state, then to God. When in reality, this is just not what the Bible is saying. It's not. This is what I think just totally against what the Bible is saying. I'll bring up a scripture passage here, and you tell me if I'm off base here. But Matthew 22 says this: "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and your mind. And this is the first and greatest commandment. The second's like this: love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." And so what's happening is that this is even a summation of the 10 commandments, right? Like Jesus said, love God first, okay? Then love others after that. And so at best, you're like a distant third because the working assumption is that, the presupposition is that we will love ourselves already. Like that's the given. Our natural disposition is to be self-centered, to be individualistic, to even to the point of where you will take care of yourself first at the hindrance of others. And so he is literally ordering something. Then the 10 commandments is the summation in these two: love God, love others. And so this is where I just don't agree, or maybe I'm misinterpreting them, or I have a struggle here where I just don't agree with that, and that we have to put God first. We have to put God first above everything else, because in that, then all the order makes more sense. Because when our highest responsibility or loyalty is to God first, everything else falls in line properly. Otherwise, we're just striving to try to piece together what kind of weird hierarchical, because sometimes it gets shifted around and sometimes it doesn't make sense, but we need God at the first. And the reason for this is because, and the reason for these commands is that the heart behind it, the heart behind the person who gives commands, like who makes commands and laws and mandates? Well, the person in charge, the person in power. So this is a difference between a dictator and a dad. The dictator makes laws to consolidate power and drives fear. The dad makes laws to give and make sure that flourishing is happening. The dictator gives laws out of greed, and the dad gives laws out of love. And the dictator wants only himself to flourish, and the dad wants his children and others to flourish before him. And so even in that, like the killing to yourself so that other people will flourish more is actually contradictory to what we just saw and heard them say. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. I still highly respect these men as teachers. They're much bigger brain than I am, but I just simply don't agree with how they laid that out. And maybe I'm taking part of this out of context, but you let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And check out this clip on identity, the most viral clip on Jordan Peterson and Vivek Ramaswamy's first podcast together, somewhere here on the description. Hit the like button. I'll see you guys in the next video.